So I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I went through quite a process to come up with this, but the title for today is How to Embrace Your True Self. And I was thinking about this because, this is a question I get a lot from people. How do I find my true self? Or
Mm-hmm.
I had to go off and find myself. And I'm just wondering if that's my unique experience, or do you get that question, or do you have that question?
I mean, probably the nature of my work, because you do therapy, but I do massage therapy and craniosacral therapy. So I don't get people asking those questions all the time unless they're already in a pretty deep state of
Oh,
consciousness and
hmm
their non-conscious is kind of speaking louder through their consciousness. So,
the I was thinking
but it
about
does
this
come
before.
up.
I was thinking about it today before we started to record. By the way, this is Mastering Thought.
Mastering thought.
that
I really hope that times up perfectly on the recording.
was that was amazing. Where we talk about the mind, marriage, and mental health. And when I thought about this idea of embracing your true self, the discovery of the true self seems to me like it's underneath the motivation for all spiritual practice.
That totally matches up with what I see on the table too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
now take a look at my subtitle.
By letting go of the false self. That's exactly what I was agreeing with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got this kind of backwards way of looking at all this stuff. People want to find something that's already there, but they're busy doing something else instead, and that's why they can't experience what it is they want to experience.
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
anyway, as you might guess,
The limb I so you're saying though, uh-oh, I'm freezing. Am I back?
yeah, the limbic system.
The limbic system. Emotions and basic survival instincts contribute to this false identity. Fight versus flight, anger slash fear by 5 years of age. Yeah. And that's so true because in the awakening that happens after the thought watching exercise, watching the limbic system fade away, you really do feel like you see who your whole self is in that
Right,
afterglow period of those few days.
right.
Yeah.
So, or in the case of Eckhart Tolle, he sat on a park bench for 2 years and watched the grass grow. So, oh, legitimately. Then there's the default mode network. The default mode network is involved in self-referential thoughts, leading to an over-identification with thoughts and stories about ourselves. In other words, rumination.
Oh,
And
so
so,
good.
so basically, we have these two factors that create the false self. We've got the limbic system, which in many respects is all about emotional pain. That's develops this core emotional instinctive reactivity in early
Mhm.
childhood that
Mhm.
interfaces with the default mode network where our thoughts turn into ruminations and we tell our story about our lives in our heads, and that is the false self.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Right. That was so helpful for me a couple weeks ago with that cingulate cortex episode.
and I'll link that at the end of the episode because that was the missing link for me. When I
Mhm.
discovered that. I mean, I've been studying the limbic system for 30 years, and but I never realized the role of the cingulate cortex in turning
Yeah.
emotional pain into suffering.
Wow. Yeah. I've been telling some clients about it too, and that was really helpful for them, just so you know.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mhm.
New
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, is it my
it,
yeah,
it's
rumination. Go ahead.
We're trying to do this new thing. All right. So Sunny wants
Sunny.
another treat.
Yeah, Sunny wants to read the next slide.
So in terms of mental health, in contexts like depression or anxiety, rumination involves dwelling on past events, mistakes, or personal shortcomings, which can perpetuate or exacerbate these conditions. I'd say 100% of my clients that are struggling with depression, anxiety, stress, relationship issues, it's characterized by a cycle of negative thinking where one might obsess over what went wrong or what could go wrong.
Yeah.
And so the rumination that happens in the default mode network, that sounds like the false self talking to us. Now, in terms of cognitive process, from a cognitive perspective, rumination is a form of problem solving gone awry. I
Right.
really
It's like
like this.
analyzing. Yeah.
Instead of leading to solutions, it keeps individuals stuck in a loop of worry, often focusing on unchangeable past events or uncontrollable future outcomes.
Right.
And, those of you who follow the channel know that, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, we teach this thought watching exercise. One of the things that prevents people from doing the exercise is they're so busy in their head in this loop of worry that they can't even do a simple exercise, mental exercise,
Mm-hmm.
because and they don't even realize they're doing this. It's pretty amazing.
Huh.
Okay,
It's interesting.
your turn. Oops. I lost my little video boxes.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I
I
can
had a
see you.
little I I had a little weirdness with my network for a second. Okay, I'll read it.
Okay,
Rumination.
let me get it back up here. Here we go.
Okay. Oh, but this is a different slide. Okay, the false self. The default mode network significantly contributes to the sense of self, particularly through self reflection, memory, and envisioning the future. It is a broader neurocognitive landscape shaping our identity. It's not the sole producer of the sense of self, but it is central to the internal processes that give rise to our subjective experience, the continuous coherent me.
So, in other words, what's happening here is this rumination in the default mode network comes with it a sense of self
Right.
that is the me that's having thoughts.
Right.
And that
Right.
is the false self. So
And
the
it's just a
false,
belief.
well, the false self is this narration
Yeah.
that we believe is ourselves
Right.
because it feels like us, it sounds like us, it has our tone and timbre, feels like it's
It's
been there
talking about our
forever.
people and our stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
so that is the false self, and it all comes from this narrative creation. So the limbic system in the default mode network contracts stories with a voice that we believe is ourselves, leading to stress, dissatisfaction, and disconnection from our true essence.
Yep. They sure
So,
do.
so what we need to do now, if you look at this slide, what do we need to do? What's the thing that needs to go away here in order for us to be free?
Well, I would say like the belief part of it.
The
You
belief,
just
right,
believe that the limbic system and default mode network are telling you the right story. But you can
right,
also choose to believe that it has a certain job, just like a machine, and that it will do that job whether you believe it or not. It will keep doing that job.
right. So
So you can choose to not
that
believe it.
what you're talking about there leads to the narrative collapsing.
Yeah.
The narrative
Yeah.
collapses through disidentification with the narrator.
Right. With those pieces of your brain, it's not you.
That's correct. The voice in your
Yeah.
head that sounds like you talking to you is not you. This disempowers the me in the head.
Yeah. Which, maybe the you that you think of yourself is a you that you want to disempower. Like for me, I can get quick to get angry. Like I like disempowering that. And when I disempower that part of me that wants to be angry about something in response, there's also a part of me that wants to be calm and still address the situation, but just not in a way that lets the parts of me that I don't like come out.
So,
What do you think?
well, when we no longer believe the narrative, the true self emerges.
Yeah.
And what we discover is the essence of who we are has been there the entire time.
Right.
Well, what's replaced it, what's kind of, laying over the top of it is this narrative that's driven by the primitive emotional brain
Right.
that is in this loop of rumination. And because it has this sense of self, we think that's me. And as long as
Right.
we believe that that narrator is me, that we are the narrator, then there is no possibility of experiencing the true self.
Mhm. It kind of strikes me, it's almost like a board member that pretends the whole organization is his.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't have the interest of the rest of the board or the organization in this scenario. It's just wants what it wants because it's got like a little side deal it wants to work out for itself. That's kind of how I'm starting to see them sometimes.
So, through disidentification, our true self embraces us. And we discover it was there the entire time.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, the true self wants to embrace us. We don't actually have to embrace it. But the,
Right.
but the problem is we've been putting up this barrier called the false
Yeah.
self, and it actually cannot embrace us as long as we believe we are the false self.
Right. You push it away.
All right, so
I want to say too that also really matches up. Like that is the moment that I'm talking about matches up with what I see on the table. Because when people are in a deep trance and their default mode network is turned off and it's like all task positive network,
mm-hmm,
um, they will say things like whatever. Let's say there's someone who's always late. They'll say, um, it makes me feel so bad to do that. And I know that all I have to do is change this and then I'll be on time. And then I can be someone who's like really proud of myself. Like those kinds of things.
mm-hmm,
I don't know. Maybe it's a bad example, but, or, um, whatever, someone who's quick to yell at their kids and they realize
mm-hmm,
like they're getting so upset because, actually they used to get yelled at and made them feel so bad and they hate that they're doing that to their kids, so they realize that their true self isn't a yeller, and they'll have these
right.
kinds of realizations while laying there. I'm not even like asking them questions, or if I am, I'm not giving them any leading. I'm just saying like, so what do you think about that, or what makes sense to you? And they'll keep realizing they need to drop the false self.
So you're right. And so the false self in both of those cases is trying to accomplish something.
Yeah.
So in order to procrastinate, which is showing up late, there has to be an internal process that's going on
Right.
that they're holding on to.
Right.
Good example of this. I had a client this last week he's a unicorn, and those of you who've familiar with the channel know about the lion unicorn model of relationships. So he has a passive system, and he was watching one of our videos on passive aggressive behavior, And he realized, I mean, he's, probably 40 years old. He realized for the first time in his life he's angry.
Oh.
He wasn't even aware he's angry.
Oh.
So this is how
Yeah.
subtle this is.
Yeah.
You know, he was astonished because he thought his wife was the angry one. But when he saw his passive anger, he saw how destructive it was. And so, this false self is made up of, our personal history and our emotional learning, and it operates on a non-conscious level.
Yeah.
And we become so used to it, and we identify with it so thoroughly, we don't even know it's there.
Right. Yeah.
Or the same thing is true, same principles for somebody who's angry all the time. Okay, well, they're angry because they're in pain. And that pain comes from their childhood and the way they interpret what's happening to them. But
Mm-hmm.
again, if you don't know how to question that, if you're so identified with the pattern, but as you've said, very clearly, when these people finally relax on the treatment table or in therapy or whatever, there's a moment where they can step back and realize, oh, I'm not doing anything I really want to do here. Where
Mm-hmm.
where is where is all this coming from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. There's like this other part of me that really doesn't like this.
Right. And so the
Yeah.
essence of who you are is not generating all this stuff that's interfering with your life. This is all about survival and childhood programming and our identification with the narration about that's going on in our heads all the time.
Yeah. Right.
And so
Right.
this brings up, okay, now what do we do about this? Well, here's some
Right.
things we can do, but we're going to go beyond this. I
I
think
appreciate you
meditation.
making this list though.
What's that?
I appreciate you making this list though, because these things
There's
do touch on disidentification sometimes. So that's all
there's
I'm saying.
something I noticed that I left off of it. I'm going to mention, but my my experience with meditation, mindfulness, journaling, and spiritual practice is they're all very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Except I think they have spotty records with
Mm-hmm.
disidentification.
Yeah, I agree.
And disidentification is the key. It's not quieting your mind. It's not
Right.
becoming mindful. It's not journaling about your feelings. All those things are great. But if you still
Mm-hmm.
believe you're the voice in your head and you are the narrator of your life, there's still identification with the false self, and that's going to be controlling
Right.
you. Now,
Right.
the
Yeah.
other thing that's not on this list that should have been is psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
because psychedelics turn off the default mode network, and
Yeah.
and for some people, not all, but for some people, depending on the frame of reference when they're taking the psychedelics, do experience a disidentification then.
I wonder if that's when sometimes people will be like, "Did I die?" Like, but they
Mm,
didn't really. I wonder if it's their default mode network turning off, and so
right.
their narrative is like gone.
That's right. And so it's really the death of the ego that happens. See, the false
Yeah.
self is the ego mind, and we're so used to living in that drama that when it finally is completely quiet and we're looking at it from afar, it is a death in a way, but it's a
Right.
death of the false self. It's not the death of the
Yeah.
real person.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So my experience is that that um, and I want to exclude psychedelics because I think they're a very powerful tool in the process of this. But these things that I listed here tend not to work because they
For
enlist
disidentification. Yeah.
for disidentification, because they enlist the false self to do the practice.
Right. 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 Right.
And so, and when you think about, this, I'm being a little facetious here, but people who try meditation, then they need to be a better meditator.
Right, right,
and
right,
then
right,
so they
right.
meditate longer, and then they start doing lifestyle changes, so they become vegetarians, and then they become meditators who are vegans, and so it's a never ending cycle of doing instead of being.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can reach that level of being is through disidentification with the voice in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Now during meditation, the voice will calm down. There's no question
Right,
about it.
right,
But when the meditation's over, you go back to talking to yourself and believing that's you.
right.
Now, not always, but I think in most cases, it doesn't finish the job of disidentification.
Yeah.
So
Witnessing thought.
we, we have we have one more approach that I do believe works for
I
this
believe it works
deciding.
too.
You know, and that's interesting. Do you mind if I ask you a question from your personal experience?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I know you had some, you mentioned before, some experience with psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very powerful. It was mind
Oh yeah.
altering, and it left permanent changes.
Yeah.
However, when you learned to witness your thoughts, it seemed like another level kicked in.
Oh yeah. It was different. It was different. So with witnessing thoughts, I would say the results were bigger. Um, as far as like being able to hear the chatter in my head
Hmm.
and things like that, the thought watching really changed that for me. Um, I would say the thought watching takes longer, but you're getting a different result. And I would say that with psychedelics, like I have seen parts about me change,
Hmm.
but I would say that it's a much smaller part than what the thought watching offered. Like even though
Okay.
I do like psychedelics and I do think that people should try them if it's safe for them, which they can find out with their doctor, but that even if I could do psychedelics like all the time, I would still value doing the thought watching exercise.
You know, I'm glad you said that because last week, 2 weeks ago, and of course, if you're watching this 6 months from now, 2 weeks won't matter. But we did an interview with Michael from Mind Bloom, and they do ketamine
Right,
therapy,
right.
and I will link that um, to the end of this episode so
Mhm.
people can see because ketamine is a psychedelic.
Mhm.
It's also an anesthetic, so it's an approved medication. But it was a pretty interesting interview. Do you agree?
Oh yeah. I thought it was interesting. He said it was on the World Health Organization's list of mandatory medicines,
Okay,
that it
I
shouldn't
remember
even be
that.
taken away from people. Like that's cool.
Yeah, very interesting. Listen, so
Yeah.
if you guys like what we're talking about and you want more, please like and subscribe to the channel. It gives
Hmm.
us that little boost that we need.
That's it. And it helps us tell you when our new stuff is out.
By the way, I just want to mention this. We have an announcement. Oops.
It's a
I don't.
disidentification exercise.
We are going to start an online community called Thought Masters. We're in the process of working on that right now. And if you're interested in becoming one of the founders of that community, just scan this QR code. And on the form, there's a checkbox if you're interested in the online community called Thought Masters and becoming a founder. It will take you to that form if you scan that QR code.
Hmm. And if you guys have any questions about it or anything that you want to know about it, you can leave a comment below, or you can still scan the QR code and just let us know what you're thinking about.
Also, our email address is in the comments. You can send us an email. Got an email the other day from somebody in Canada, and we had a little chat, and it was really
Nice.
interesting. Okay, so let's go back to witnessing thought here. And disidentification comes through the process of learning to become the observer by witnessing simple thoughts.
Simple thoughts.
So, and what's a simple thought? A simple thought is a thought like, "Oh, I need to get the dog a treat."
I'm running
Or,
out of milk.
"Yeah, I wonder if we're going to have rain tomorrow."
Yeah.
Those are simple thoughts. So here's the exercise. This is the disidentification exercise. Relax and let the next thought appear in your mind.
And don't close your eyes.
Don't close your eyes. That's right. The instruction is don't close your eyes. Do this with your eyes open. Simply observe the voice in your head. As you do, you will notice the voice instantly goes away. Okay? And the question becomes, are you the thinker or the observer? Because every time you try to observe, the thought goes away. Now practice this on only simple thoughts 2 to 4 times a day.
And I want to reemphasize the simply observe the voice in your head. It can be really easy to want to like do something after you witness the thought, like talk to it or argue with it or like try to figure out what it meant. But
Right.
that negates the benefit of the exercise. So all
Yeah.
you have to do is simply observe and
So
let it go.
the instant you become you recognize that you're thinking, you become the observer and the thought goes away. And that leads to an awakening moment of disidentification. And it's a very powerful shift in consciousness that happens.
Yeah, it is.
So as Christina was saying, only practice us on trivial everyday thoughts. No analysis, no expectations. Oops, I let my thumb wander.
No mastering thought. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Don't talk back to the thought. Simply observe your own mental activity.
Yeah, during the exercise.
And if you want help with the
And the quietness
exercise, reach out to us.
Yeah.
One of the things we're going to do on the online community is we're going to teach people and then support people in learning this exercise.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I've been a therapist for 25 years. This is the method I've used to cure anxiety, depression, stress, relationship problems, and it results in an awakening experience that is a spiritual, psychological, and emotional awakening.
So good.
And
So good.
it's very clear when it happens. It's a shift in
Mm-hmm.
consciousness that's unmistakable.
Yeah, it changes your relationship with all thoughts.
That's right.
And so that's so amazing. Changes your
Yeah.
whole
Now
life because of that.
you don't have to work on negative thoughts. You don't have to
Right.
have positive affirmations. None of those things substantially work until you disidentify from thought itself. So
Yep.
if
Love
you
it.
want to
It's
know
so
more
good.
about these concepts, I've written a bunch of books. 3 of them are right here. The Dance of the Lion and Unicorn is about relationships. Mastering Thought is about this exercise we're talking about. And Awakening kind of combines all the concepts, and it's a sequel to The Dance of the Lion and Unicorn. In The Lion and Unicorn, there's a couple called Pat and Angie, and they continue on in the Awakening book. It's kind of a sequel, so it's very interesting. And I'll never forget when the book first came out. I had one of my clients read it, and it was a man, believe it or not, you know. And he comes in and he says, I just have one question. He says, do Pat and Angie make it?
So I'm concerned about them.
That's how realistic it is.
They've become my friends. That's cute.
So this is how we embrace our true selves, by getting rid of the false self and letting the true self embrace us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts?
Ta-da!
Any thoughts to wrap up, Christina?
Mm, I would just say, I would encourage the listener to um, not make too big of a deal of the thought watching exercise as far as you're
Right.
putting a lot of pressure on yourself. But I do
Mhm.
think it's very important to get the details very clear as you begin, because it's going to make a big difference on how soon your awakening happens. And, um, you can ask some other listeners we've had that are still trying to figure out their thought watching out. And, it makes a big difference when you can skip problems that might have delayed your awakening a couple weeks or whatever. So,
That's one of the reasons why we're doing the Thought Masters community, is because
yeah.
many other people have been through this and they can kind of help answer questions and clarify things. The biggest
Yeah.
problem that I have with people when I teach this is they don't allow it to be as simple as it is.
Yeah. Like I
It's a
didn't. Like it took us 3 weeks before, like we did 2 weeks of don't do this videos because of my issues and other common mistakes with the thought watching exercise. And
Yeah,
so,
the biggest hurdle in learning this is to learn how simple it is and allow it to be simple. So
allowing it,
you're just
because we're
noticing the voice in
doers
your
and we
head.
need to be.
Yeah, so people want to analyze it, they want to talk back to it, they want to do more, they want to learn a gold star,
Yeah.
and with this exercise, less is more.
Well, we should say doing more is a gold star on your making this too difficult chart, on the delaying your awakening chart.
So we want to thank everybody for being with us today, and come back again real soon. If you want to talk
Yes,
to us,
please.
go back and scan the QR code,
Or
and you
leave
can
a
reach out
comment.
to us,
Hmm.
and we will look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. I would love to actually hear from some of our people that we haven't talked to in a little bit, how your thought watching exercises are
That would
going.
be
So please,
that would be
please
great.
talk to us.
All right, everybody.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark. It was fun.
Nice talking to you. Bye
Yeah, I
bye.
hope everyone enjoyed it. Bye.